tongue, if that's a possibility. But James begins chapter 3, verses 1 and 2 by saying, "Not many of you should become teachers." Well, that's a good way to start off. Don't become a teacher. What's his point here? "My brothers and sisters, for you know that we who teach will be judged with greater strictness." So here's what his point is here. Those that have a greater responsibility have a greater accountability. Those that have more influence can affect more people, therefore they're going to have much more accountability for what they say and for their actions. Jesus said in Matthew 12:36, "But I tell you that everyone will have to give an account on the day of judgment for every empty word or idle word they have spoken." So think about that. The words that we speak, the Bible teaches, have power. They have influence. And those of us that have a greater influence must be more diligent about what we're saying and teaching. And you know, I think about today with this pandemic, of the people who have such a great impact on people, from politicians to preachers to healthcare workers. And there has been so much misinformation out there about the vaccine, and I'm just amazed as I hear people's stories, and somebody I know in my family had refused to take the vaccine because it heard all these crazy things and conspiracy stories until their husband ended up in ICU and nearly died, and some have died. And what I'm saying is there is a lot of mistalk about this today, and you know, I work at the hospital and I see the numbers, I see the facts, I see the people that are dying, and so I see what's really going on behind the scenes. And there's a lot of people today, I feel that they're not being careful with either their silence or what they're saying. And they're influencing a lot of people. And I just want to say today, if you're listening by way of internet or whatever, and you're one of those people that are spreading false gossip or misinformation, and people are dying as a result of it, I think that's on you. That's a responsibility. And shame on you for causing other people to fall because of your mistakes and your words. And so we as pastors and spiritual leaders have a greater responsibility not to mislead people, whether it be in a way of scriptures or a way of medical, you know, because we can have an influence on people that we don't even realize. And I'm just amazed at the number of people who say, "Well, I'm not getting it because I heard this or I heard that," or you know, it's not effective or whatever. There's all kinds of misinformation out there, folks, and we have to be careful about where we're getting our information. And we have to be careful about how we're spreading misinformation. We are going to be responsible for a lot of people's lives if we're not careful. And so James is saying those that have a greater responsibility also have a greater accountability. And, you know, a lot of people, I've heard so many people say, "Well, you know, I don't have to worry about it. I prayed up and the blood of Jesus is covering me and the Lord's going to take care of me." And, you know, we all heard that story, that joke about the fellow on the rooftop. Every one of us probably heard it, but it bears repeating because it's so true. I've heard it so many times. So many people say, "Well, my faith in God is stronger and I don't have to worry about anything bad happening to me." Trust me, I've heard it over and over and over again. And I think of that fellow who's up on the roof and he's sitting there, and, you know, well, first of all, a flood comes, and about the time it comes, it's covering at the time, it's just at his ankles. He's like, somebody says, you better get out of here. And he's like, "Don't worry about it. The Lord take care of me." Next thing you know, it's at his waist, and they said, "You better do something." "Oh, the Lord's going to take care of me." Next thing you know, it's coming up to his neck, and finally he goes up to the roof, gets on the roof, and it goes up all the way almost to his neck on the roof, and he says, somebody comes by in a rowboat and says, "Hey, buddy, just catch on. I'll throw the rope out to you, and we'll take you to safety." "No, the Lord's taking care of me." Another guy in a rowboat comes by, does the same thing. "No, the Lord's going to take care of me." Finally, it's over his head. and he's under the water. And a guy comes by in the helicopter, drops down the lifeline. He sticks his head out of the water and says, "Don't worry about it. The Lord's going to take care of me." And the fellow dies. And you know the story. He goes to heaven. And the Lord said, "What happened down there?" He said, "Lord, you let me down. What happened? You were supposed to rescue me." And God said, "You big dummy, I sent 2 rowboats and a helicopter and you still drowned." So, I think there's some truth in this humor here today to think about the fact that sometimes God gives us doctors and gives us medicine and gives us all these things all through time. If you look down through history of all the things that God has given us and wiped out so many other, polio and all these things, and yet sometimes we don't understand that this is a gift from God. It's a gift from God. We prayed for this, and it finally came. And as I look at the people in our hospital today and across our nation, the truth of the matter is 90% of the people, most of the people that are dying and they're really sick in the hospital are people who've not been vaccinated. That's a fact. That's not a political thing. That's a fact. And so when we try to say something that's not true, we have to understand that we have a responsibility for that. I think there's such a thing as faith, and there's also such a thing as common sense. See, I may not have enough faith to go out and handle snakes, but I got enough sense to know not to do it. You know what I'm saying? So there's common sense and there's faith. And there are times when God gives us common sense and said He expects us to be smart about things.